On page AyinBase 13, approximately the third from the top of the page, the line begins with the word mayhakodem.
What is the Russia table Beis I Aleph Vav Al?
Even nachher. The focus in this whole discussion for a long time now is to explain and give us a means to relate to a principle that that despite the fact that there's a tzimtzum and the tzimtzum is in the Ayin Sof, and therefore what remains, what comes after the tzimtzum is not Ayin Sof. Beifan acher legamri, in totally different thing as we discussed. But tzimtzum provides for a noyah that has an element of innovation, of novelty. When you have the question, where is it coming from? Now we're getting from gvul, which didn't exist before. We discussed yesterday. Toile eretz al belima. The earth is suspended on nothingness. There's no explanation. It's not this. There is not a structure to it. There's a reality. It's suspended because there is God, and that this is what God wants. Period. There's another way of putting it. The earth is where it should be, where it has to be, not where it finds a place in where it is secure and safe. It is where it is, where it has to be. This is that it is bechinat ain't safe. There is no, you can't really point to what is actually holding it. So this is just an illustration of the principle. and despite the fact that there is a tzimtzum, what comes further is not Ayin Sof. Nevertheless, yet still, the element, the aspect of Ein Sof is still manifest in the gvul. Because of the principle of bechinat kiruv. Which comes up repetitively. The principle of bechinat kiruv we also discussed, but this is a little bit of an elusive principle, concept, and it is of utmost importance. It's important in our avodah. In our avodah, the bechinat kiruv is expressed in the form that we are doing everything leshem shamayim. Leshem shamayim. In our concept, we perceive that we are going to help the mayhakodem. What does leshem shamayim mean? We relegate totally our actions and the purpose of our actions to the shamayim. This is how the Rebbe made it, and this is how I want to do it, because that's how he designed it, not because it's beneficial, not because I understand it, not because it makes sense to me. In other words, the shamayim becomes the reality and the force behind every action. because the term leshem shamayim could be implying I am doing something leshem shamayim. So therefore, the impetus and the force behind it is my decision, my will. Then the leshem shamayim is lost. This is the bechinat kiruv. I am sustained by the shamayim. My whole mitzvah is defined by the shamayim. That's what bechinat kiruv.
How does that? In other words, what does kiruv have to do with that?
Staying close to the source. Yes, he gave me sechel, he gave me this. All that is focused and dedicated to recognizing the shamayim. Recognizing not only the shamayim, recognizing how this is representative of the shamayim. The truth is, I've mentioned all the time, sechel is a godly gift. Sechel is not a natural phenomenon. Every creature in the world has a natural status. It eats, and it provides for its food, it provides for its young. Everything has a natural basis. Sechel has no natural basis. Again, we talk about sechel in its true definition. Not sechel that substantiates my gashmias and my gashmistic world. Sechel that which perceives that which only sechel can perceive. And a different kind of reality, a sechel type of reality. This is a godly gift. Like the Rambam says, you don't need to have sechel. There's one principle you have to remember, you have to know, ingrained in your mind, that there's a first being. Wait a second, my first being is the world. And then I explain everything. I explain everything to make sense of the world, and to be able to partake and enjoy the world. That's what I'm about. He says no, that's not sechel. If you want to have sechel, your first principle, your first reality has to be the motivation. What is that? There's no world definition to that. What faculty, how do we relate to it? This is what sechel is. The sechel reality is a completely different level. This is the bechinat kiruv. This is the fundamental difference between the human being and the animal. The animal is very satisfied to have its prey and have its haul, and the human being has to say, what am I about? Where is the godly element in this? Without that, I can't live. Let's pursue this. All right. So I said that we are about a third from the top of the page, a little bit more. The line begins mayhakodem. It's AyinBase 13. The line begins mayhakodem. And then after the parenthesis. So even though there is a tzimtzum, Omikol mokoim yet still hamshoch as hakav. The hamshoch is hakav, the manner in which the kav is drawn. It is in a manner of kiruv, being close to the Ein Sof before the tzimtzum. In other words, even though the kav constitutes an oir that is affected by the tzimtzum, as we explained, the nakuda is the kav, the formulation, but it is nevertheless bechinat kiruv mayhakodem of shenichni atzimtzum. And he explains, this is an image that we encountered before. The big day sheyi agili hakav min hankuda derishimu, which means that in order that it should be gilui hakav, that the kav element should be surface from the nakuda of the rishimu. The nakuda of the rishimu, this is what remains as a result of the tzimtzum. We discussed it yesterday, to the extent possible. In order to draw the kav from that nakuda, zehu alidei hakiruv de'enei soif. This is by the effect of the closeness, of the cognizance of the Ein Soif shechoizer umeyer achar tzimtzum, that reverts back, umeyer, and it illuminates after the tzimtzum. In other words, what is the impetus? What is the force? What is the principle behind the Hamshachas HaKav? Even though the Kav is affected by the tzimtzum, it's only a Kav, like you say, it's a line. It is that there is Ayin Soif that is not affected by the tzimtzum. The Ayin Soif element is what affects, what initiates the Kav principle.
How is the kiruv used over here? It seems different.
But need kiruv. Even though it's a kav, doesn't run away with the kav element, the tzimtzum element, but it goes back to connect and to recognize the Ayin Soif.
Sounds like chokhmah.
Sounds like chokhmah. Let us put this in a perspective. And he said, this is an amazing thing. Everything that Chassidus explained, everything that exists in the higher world exists in the lower world. You know how far? In the lowest of worlds. In our own experience. You want to teach your child AyinBase. You're going to teach your child AyinBase. You can't teach him anything more. Just the Aleph. One Aleph, one base. And then comments Aleph, then comments base. Right? Why do you want to teach him? What inspires you to teach him the AyinBase? The AyinBase? Or the entire Torah? What inspires you to teach him this? Excuse me? The entire Torah. But you're teaching him AyinBase, teach him the entire Torah. No, there's no way. I'm focusing on the AyinBase and I want him to know the AyinBase perfectly. And I have all the time for this. And he goes away and he starts singing Kometz Aleph, and it becomes a symphony in my ears. The entire Torah is represented there. That's because it's bechinat kiruv Ayin Soif.
Kiruv is that it comes into this detail. In other words, I'm stuck on this idea of kiruv means that it comes into all these
Think
details.
about this. No. You could, the AyinBase is a presence, an entity. These days, in my days, I didn't have it, but these days, if you go to the beginning of the Seder, there's an AyinBase chart. Wow, an AyinBase chart, that's all you need to know. On the other page, there is an AyinBase chart with the Kometz Aleph. Okay? Is that what you're touching? And so this is a reality, the AyinBase chart. Is this what you're teaching? Let me explain to you what the result of that would be. the conservative movement. Exactly. You didn't hear? Huh?
I was here. No, 8 minutes late.
You understand? It's exactly the conservative movement. He said, "Hey, America, this is you can't teach him about supernatural thing. You can't teach him about Hashem Echad. You can't teach him about the miracles of Mitzrayim. You have to limit it." Yes, it's true. You have to limit it. You have to teach start from the AyinBase, but you must not limit it to the AyinBase. The AyinBase is only representative of the reality.
The kiruv is that the whole reality is right there with
That's right. You sense the closeness of reality, and this is the impetus to teach the AyinBase. We start teaching our children Kometz Alefo. One explanation why we start with Kometz, not Patach. Kometz Alefo, because Kometz Alefo, this is the Kometz Alefo, Monoiche Hashem Elokecha. So you're really teaching them Maseres HaDibros. But you start with the Kometz Alef. It's entirely in line. Not only in line, it's entirely real. That when the child sits next to his dad, and the tati is davening, and the child is davening from the Kometz Alefo, they're on equal par. You're doing exactly the same thing. Let's start bechinat kiruv. The big days. Okay, I'm repeating the words which I read already because now I think we'll be able to sense the force behind it. The big days, because in order that there should be the gili hakav, the surface, the kav should surface from the nakuda of the rishim. Nakuda of the rishim means that everything has been reduced to a nakuda. From that nakuda you have to draw the whole kav. Zehu, that is alidei. This is by the force and the impetus of hakiruv the Ayin Sof, of the close proximity of the sense of the Ayin Sof. Shechoizer umeir achar tzimtzum. After the you sense, oh, by the way, there is Ayin Sof, and this ha'orah, this oil of the Ayin Sof, this is what forces the gili of the hakav.
Sorry for the question, but what is sensing?
What?
What's sensing the kiruv of the Ayin Sof? What is, in other words,
The limited oil that's in the yeshiva.
and from there that is the impetus to bring the
That is what brings down everything that's contained in it.
And the Chayzer and Meir, that's all from the Mila.
Yeah. I want to give a little bit of a side issue in terms of chinuch. These are all very. It's not part of our class of learning, but this is what our class is about. Just as you would not interrupt your davening in the middle, if your child is standing next to you and saying AyinBase, don't interrupt him. What are you up to? Because he is doing exactly what you're doing. And if you have to interrupt him, When you up to, you have to, okay, so the market, this is where we are. Day tzimtzum, which means that day tzimtzum, by the effect of the tzimtzum, kvar nimtzo hanakudo, their surfaces, the nakudo shekoleiles kol ha'oyer shel tzir ha'elos, that includes the entire oyer that is for the sake of worlds. What is the oil shel tzir ha'elos? In this Nakuda is contained the entire oil shel tzir ha'elos. You would say that oilmas are not oil. Oilmas is all is mitzias. Like we speak all the time, there is an oil in a human being. There is a spirit for a table, but when it comes into the world, it becomes a table, a physical table. It's not oil. You have to understand that this is not correct. Yes, there is a higher oil, an oil that is through and through the inyan from Ayin is safe. But then there is the oil that comes through the tzimtzum, what's called oil shel tzir ha'elos. Even within the worldly structure, everything that exists, every last piece of furniture, a piece of gashmis, has an element of oil. But it's oil shel tzir ha'elos. It's oil within the worldly context. We will have a chance to talk about this, but just I hope it be sense the singing. To the extent, even though a table is really in the world from the worldly perspective, it's just for convenience. It's only for convenience. But this convenience element is also a human element. See if you can sense this. Why should a human being have convenience? It's a human element. It's so to speak, it's a royal quality. Even if it's only convenience, it's entirely worldly. There too there is an element of oil. Like we said the other day, the human being was lying in the gutter, in the dirt, is missing a human quality in a simple sense, in a simple worldly sense. This is not what a human being is. What's the difference? He's eating and you're eating. He's drinking his whiskey and you're drinking your whiskey. What's the difference? Even in a functioning worldly level, there is a difference. There's an oyer. There's a story that I heard, I think I repeated it right here. There was a chassid of Avraham Ali Plotkin. Avraham Ali Plotkin was a chassid from Lubavitch. And Baruch Hashem, these are the few chassidim that traveled with us from Russia. And we had a little bit of a sampling of the original. So we were together in Paris. And the story goes that he was walking through the streets of Paris, and they passed by a bar. And the bar was very loud. Something was going on in the bar. So he stopped and he peeked in through the window. What's going on in the bar? So what was going on, I don't know what exactly, but it was screaming and singing and dancing, whatever it is, a bar format. So he watched for a while, and then he turned around and said, "It's a little bit off color, but it's still happy, still joyous. It's a little off color, but it's still joyous." In other words, there's a human element in this. There's oir, even though it's off color. The expression was not off color, it's a zeiteklich. You know what a zeiteklich means?
To the side.
Huh?
To the side.
A little from the side, a little from the left side. But it's a fortfreilich.
The man lying in the gutter, this is,
The man line gutter has to be pulled out of there.
there's no ore there.
There's no oil in there. That's where he forfeited the oil.
These people,
Huh?
these people are drinking to live. These people,
The people living drink to live. They think so.
And the guy in the gutter is mama's lifeless. He's lost. He lost the purpose of drinking.
There's an upside to the man in the gutter. He owns the whole world.
Right. That's not an upside. That's a downside. Because his whole world is imaginary. It's got nothing real. This is the ha'oyer shel tzera ha'olamus. It's within the one of the context, but it's oyer. Okinoida, and as it is well known, the lifnei had tzimtzum, that prior to the tzimtzum lehoya niker klal bechinas ha'oyer hashayach ha'olamus. The bechina, the aspect of the oyer hashayach ha'olamus that can relate to worlds, was not at all recognizable. That's before the tzimtzum. Validei had tzimtzum, and then, as a result of the tzimtzum, shehu his'almus ha'oir, which is a state of his'almus ha'oir, when the oir was concealed, which means the pure oir that does not have a content, but the oil as it is unto itself was the salmus, which is what the inyan from Torah al belimo. The world stands in a structured way, and there is ways to explain physically, moral-wise, how things are suspended. But you mustn't lose sight of the oil. May I take a minute and we'll explain to you what this is. The scientific explanation, understanding of the suspension of the earth in mid space is that the earth is equally balanced among all the various planets and stars, the entire cosmos. Everything is affecting everything else. As a result, this is how it is held up. What?
Actually, it's not completely balanced because it's moving around.
It's moving
in
around.
circles, so
That's
it's
moving around is
almost
also
balanced.
affected, but is also caused by the various forces.
It is balanced.
Okay, there are no mysteries in the cosmos. And then we have oir are two totally different levels. There is the oil eretz al blima. No, reality is al blima. It is not suspended. It's not being held up by any physical means. It is held up because God wants it to there. That's the oil that had to go to a tzimtzum in order to be able to be understood from the world perspective. But that's the real oil. Then there is another oil, that is within worldly context. Okay? Within worldly context, it is important to understand. This table is standing over here because the floor is supporting it. Is the table here because the floor is supporting it? Do you understand my question?
No.
There is an oyer that the table represents. Yes, indeed, it's standing on the floor. But that's not what it represents. This is not what you're looking at. It's very much tzimtzum. In other words, the fact that the table, that you human beings want the table there, that itself will not hold it up there. It should, but it doesn't. And ultimately, in the real truth, it does. But you don't see it in the world. In the world, you see that you have to have a floor to hold it up.
Which part of it is the tzarech ha'olam? Is the fact that the floor holds it up, or the fact that there's an impetus from the...
Tzarech ha'olam is this element that there is an oyer that is represented by this presence, but it is in a manner that the world can relate to it. The world is a participant in it. Okay, time is up. We'll have to pick it up from there. But we get the point?
Meaning that it has to be held up by the floor, and that it has a structure, and all this is the fact that this is the worldly element of it.
Wait a second. It's held up on the floor, there's a structure and so forth. But what is the oil in this? You mustn't lose sight of the oil.
But it's still a real table.
It's still a real table. It's in the right place. And we as human beings should relate and should be observing the oil element rather than the structural element. This is not what we relate to.
The table is there because of the aura.
The table is there because of the oil, exactly. And this is what keeps it there.
If the floor weren't there, it would still be there.
Okay. If the floor weren't there, it would still be there. Why? Because it would make a floor.
There has to be a floor there.
That's internal.
Perfectly balanced planets that's purely structural. That's not answering any kind of aura whatsoever.
Exactly. This is the problem.
What's that?
Isn't the idea itself
Planets.
this perfect balance some aspect also of or that there is such a thing in a physical world that seems to be of itself, but this balance idea?
In the physical world, there is no balance idea. In the physical world, there is no balance idea. It is brute force against force.
But that equilibrium, right, where they force against force and they hold.
They don't collide.
There's no coordination there.
Each man for himself.
But the total result of that, though, is a coordination.
Total result of that is a fool's view. Okay. So, but that's not what it's intended. When you have a partnership, Okay, the time is one. You have the partnership. And people are building this business together. Are they building the business or building themselves? Right? It's no oil. And the proof in this thing they're putting is that the minute there's some kind of fallout, they make their enemies. They end up in court. Almost every partnership ends up in court. Okay, let's hear. Okay, this is it.
Thank you very much.